Now, Mujib Dada-Kadri is joining me, a lawyer and an economic analyst who will also be helping us to explain some of the issues within the Nigerian economy, our gains so far, and the prospect of the Nigerian economy going forward. I want to welcome Mujib to the show right now, and for him is to help us understand from the legal perspective as well as the socio-economic development of the Nigerian economy right from 1960 to date. What are the gains? What is the prospect of Nigerian economy going forward? Let me welcome Kadri right now. Very good day to have you on the show.
Happy Independence.
Happy Independence to you, Kadri. So let's get down to the discussion. If I may ask, how can you describe, let me put it this way, how can you describe the Nigerian economy right from 1960 to date?
Well, I would describe it as a very slow progress. That's the best description, very slow. From 1960 to 1970, it was quite ambitious. From 1980 to now, it has been quite slow. Some progress, but quite slow.
Interesting. And when you say the economy is slow, slow in the nature of the gains that you think that we would have achieved, or slow in the aspect of tackling some of the challenges within the economy? Let's have your perspective on that.
Well, slow in all ramifications. We're talking about economic growth, talking of infrastructures, infrastructure development, talking of all ramifications of social development indexes. It has been quite slow. Being specific now, I said from 1960 to 1970, we exhibited more ambitious strides. We are rated higher than many of the faster developing Southeast Asian tigers. Were highly rated at that time in the 70s. We had impressive GDP per capita, ambitious GDP per capita. We had impressive and ambitious industrialization pace. But from 1980s to now, no ramifications. In terms of social development, in terms of infrastructure, it has been slow compared to our counterparts that we started together in the 1960s.
Now, if you are to take a retrospective review of what has really happened from that 1960 to now, because this morning when the president was talking and making his speech, independence speech, he did highlight some of his achievements. But you see, make us understand that we need to reflect back. Now, in reflecting back, in your own understanding, what were our challenges that draw us back, even though we have the ambitions to go higher, but we remain small in our own way? What do you think is the challenge?
Well, when you examine or compare the discipline, the vision of political elites of 1960s or that existed in 1960s and 1970s, we discover that their discipline and the vision, let me say vision, I'll call it vision. The discipline and vision of the political elite of that era are quite different from the discipline in quotes, and the vision of the current political elites, or should I say the kinds of political elites we had from 1980s till now. In the 1960s and 1970s, the political elite of that era were not so materialistic. I would say not so materialistic, not as greedy as the current political elites we have, and they had more ambitious outlook for the economy. And this outlook and this mindset was reflective in our economic ambitions, in our economic progress at that time. And I said in the 1970s, we had ambitious industrialization pace. Almost all regions of Nigeria had either agro-industrial hubs or core industrial hubs. It wasn't just about Lagos only. We had ambitious factories in Kano, in Kebbi, in Ibadan, in Onitsha, even in Wari was active. Wari in Delta State was active at that time. But now that's all changed. So if we were to reflect, the core difference or the core issue is the fact that the crops of political elites we have now are not as selfless or are not as progressive, I would say, like that of 1960s and 1970s. Those in 1960s and 1970s were more modest and, should I say, more patriotic.
Talking about modest, we read in the speech of the president this morning where he highlighted some of the achievements of his economic blueprint for Nigeria just in 2 years. And for the president, these are things we could also celebrate as we celebrate our 65th independent anniversary. For instance, he made mention of the popular, infamous Ways and Means that runs into 27 trillion naira that previous government was owing. But for the current president and for the current administration, they were able to deal with that. And for now, I think it is at a zero level. But what do you make of such achievement going forward in the economy, where the government is owing himself, but at this point in time, the government has been able to pay himself out of the debt that is owing, because that debt was a huge debt to the Nigerian economy. But let's have your take on that.
Well, in all sincerity, I must commend the ingenuity of the current governor of Central Bank, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso. I must commend his ingenuity and innovation in loan refinancing and loan structure, and for introducing a lot of in-house reforms, in quotes, for the CBN in particular. However, this does not confirm that the current administration is modest enough in fiscal spendings or in what I would term as fiscal modesty. Well, I haven't seen that. I can say we have such modesty in our fiscal planning, in our expenditures, in our budget streamlining. I won't say, or in our budget, I won't say I've seen much of modesty. But particularly, I must commend the efforts of the current CBN governor, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, for a lot of in-house reforms and for discipline within that agency.
Interesting. But let's also take another swipe at what the president is saying, talking about economic achievement. He's also talking about the tax to GDP ratio that have helped the government to raise some critical revenue. For instance, he made mention of over 3.76 trillion that have been raised so far when it comes to revenue from non-oil sector. This wasn't achieved in the past, but currently we are seeing that as one of the achievements within the 65 years of our independence. But what is your thought on this?
Well, sincerely, we have to separate the sources, or specifically analyze and examine what are the sources, what are the sources of the non-oil revenues. We have two kinds of non-oil revenues. We can talk about of the tax revenues, or we'll talk of revenues from other sources. But see, we must commend the impressive strides in tax revenues. There have been a lot of reforms. We must give kudos to the FIRS boss, Dr. Adedeji. Give kudos to Mr. Oyedele and the team. We've seen non-conventional and conventional approaches and reforms to our tax sector, for our tax policies. That's commendable. But for the other side of non-oil revenue, we're talking of agro exports, exports in other sectors. To be frank with you, such improvements in that sector are not results of any intentional efforts of this administration. We have to be sincere about that. The improved non-oil exports is not as a result of any intentional or strategic efforts of this administration. If there's any, let's see. It is a result of the devaluation of Naira and the dynamics to international trade in cocoa that boosted a lot of improved agro export, not due to any intentional or strategic effort of this administration when it comes to agro export or agro-industrialization. We have to be sincere about that. But as for taxes, as for tax revenues, that's why I'm being particular in separating and, should I say, examining two revenue sources. For tax revenues, they've done well. This administration has done well. The team has done so well in boosting the.
All right, we have a freezing from our network provider there, but Mujib will be joining me shortly, and I hope we can get some of his thoughts on that aspect. I already know Mujib to have an understanding, key understanding in the export arena of Nigerian economy as a lawyer who normally drafts some legal, document in that area. That's why I was able to identify the non-tax revenue from the non-oil tax revenue, which shows that we have a significant growth when it comes to the taxes coming from all those aspects. But the other aspect is trying to point out is that although government is not doing much to encourage that side, but money is still coming from there, and he's expecting the government to do much in this regard. The next thing I wanted to ask Mujib is about, okay, Mujib, you are back. Okay, okay, go ahead with your thoughts so that we can move to other things. Go ahead. There's something you wanted to put out on that aspect.
I was saying that the tax, the GDP has increased. We must give kudos to the handlers. The tax revenues or the tax contribution to the GDP has increased by over 200%. But we're still suffering from budget deficit and some discrepancies, despite these improvements. But we'll get to that level.
Exactly. But let's also take on another aspect of the achievement under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in 2 years, and which is highlighting as we celebrate Nigeria's 65th independent anniversary. We also talk about the mining sector, which he described, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu described that sector as the pivotal to engineering a new economy for Nigeria. For instance, he made mention that that sector is growing above the 3% that initially projected for it. But you're also in that area, doing your legal professional work. But what do you make of the mining sector and its impact on the Nigerian economy?
Well, this is an opportunity for me to commend some basic efforts and basic reforms of the current Minister of Mineral Resources, Mr. Anaki. He has been quite ambitious, but there's still a lot of stones left unturned. But I must commend his audacity, and it has reflected in that sector. There have been recent investments in lithium mining. We witnessed the inauguration of a very sophisticated lithium mining complex in Nasarawa State. There have been security apparatus established to check illegal miners in some parts of Nigeria. You still have more roles to play in that sector, in that security apparatus. Actually, still have a lot of things to do in that aspect. But there have been basic reforms, basic improvements, compared to previous handlers of that ministry. There have been basic reforms, and that's what has reflected in this second quarter GDP report for 2025. Actually, there have been impressive efforts, yes, I would say, but we still have more to do. We still have more to do in maximizing the potentials in that sector, in gold mining and processing. We have to be particular about that, in gold mining and processing, because the wealth of mining is in processing and not just mining. The wealth of mining is in processing and not just mining. So we should look forward to more ambitious investments, which, in my own perspective, should be state-led. That's it.
Interesting. But let's take a swipe on one of the key achievements when it comes to social investment. Just recently, the president launched what he called the Credit Corp, and for him, over 153,000, members of Nigerian society, or citizens, I would say, are now enjoying some luxury, loans and credit from that particular organization. But what do you make of that? Because This is not the first time government in Nigeria will be establishing such gigantic project. Since 1960 and over 65 years, we have seen such credit facility coming to Nigerian people. If you recall the family activation fund that was in the past, you win and the rest of them. But what do you make of this credit corp under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at this point in time?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, if we were to give a perspective to the social investment as a whole, this administration has not, I'm not impressed actually, in terms of the social investment. The social investment strategy as a whole has not been impactful, in my own view, except for the student loan intervention. That's the only aspect of social investment I might commend, or I will commend. But in terms of the credit corp, which intends to intervene in what they call consumer loan or personal loan policy or consumer loan sector, as far as I'm concerned, if you look at the capital base of that credit corp, it can't be so effective. The credit corp is less than 100 billion naira in capital base. How many Nigerians can you finance, or can you empower with such credit facility with less than 100 billion naira? And we must also state that this is the failure of our monetary policies that has triggered unnecessary, or let me say, outrageous interest rates that have justified the reasons for this credit corp. If we have friendly monetary policies with lower interest rates, banks, established banks, the commercial banks and other financial institutions will be interested in giving out more credit facilities at favorable interest rates. We should be thinking of less than 10% interest rates to drive more consumer demands. I mean, to drive more consumer demands, to drive more SME industrialization processes. But with less than 100 billion, I don't know. I haven't benefited from credit corp. I haven't benefited from that, either from business angle or from consumer loan. I haven't. Most Nigerians are still at the mercy of loan sharks. So even if the loan sharks are still prosperous, imagine a loan shark offering 20-40% monthly interest rate for loans. So if those loan sharks are still effective and still doing fine in our economy, so how should we justify the success of credit corp?
Interesting. But before I let you go, Mujib, for the next 5 years, when Nigeria will be celebrating 70th anniversary of its independence, where do you think we are going to be in that regard?
Well, sincerely, this administration still has more opportunities to jig the economy and trigger the economy for more economic revolutions. But as it is now, I don't think they are ambitious enough to prioritize economic prosperity. In my own perspective, what they are prioritizing is more of fiscal reforms to favor revenue stability. But in terms of economic stability and economic prosperity, these are not being prioritized. And when you prioritize revenue stability at the expense of economic prosperity, but there is no connection between your revenue stability and economic prosperity, I don't see any miracle in the next 5 years. But if they can reconcile the revenue stability and economic prosperity, we should see more prosperous and more satisfying 70th birthday for Nigeria.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Mujib Kadri, for coming on the show, and your submissions are quite interesting and instructive at this point in time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. All right. I'll be speaking with Mujib Kadri, who happens to be a lawyer and an economic analyst. In his area of law, focus on business export and business strategy. And he has helped us understand that for him, the president and his team should look at not just revenue stability, but also look at economic prosperity for all Nigeria. And for Dr. Engineer Wisdom Enang is about making sure that we have the right investment in place for our oil and gas sector, linking up to the Nigerian economic stability going forward. This will be the size of our show on this special independent anniversary edition of the Market Report. My humble self and my crew here, the Market Report, ADBN Television, wishing all Nigerians happy 65th independent anniversary and more prosperity for Nigeria going forward. See you soon with our next edition. Bye for now.